Hi everyone, this is BTEC Psychology. This is the learning explanation of alcohol addiction. And in this video we're going to look at basically the things that you're already familiar with: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement and vicarious reinforcement, classical conditioning, and how they would explain an alcohol addiction, basically by learning from our environment. So as per the other explanations, we'll be looking again at initiation, how it starts, maintenance, how it continues, and relapse, how we end up going back into it when trying to quit. So initiation, there's three processes at work here. First of all, we have positive reinforcement. Hopefully you recognise this diagram of a brain that I've put here. This is the same process as happens in someone who is smoking. Alcohol molecules activate the dopamine receptors in our VTA, ventral tegmental area, which leads to that dopamine reward pathway being activated in our brain. Release of dopamine in the nucleus accumbens, number 2, and the prefrontal cortex, number 3 in this picture. So you have that direct, that buzz that occurs in the same way with alcohol as it does with smoking. Equally, other things in the environment also act as a direct reward, people praising them, enjoyment of the atmosphere and so on. And they act as direct rewards as well for drinking alcohol. Then secondly, we have indirect learning going on, vicarious reinforcement. If there's other people that you know nearby, role models that you can watch who are enjoying alcohol and therefore being sociable, being friendly, you're more likely, if you can see those positive consequences for them of drinking alcohol, you're more likely to copy them as well. Then the last process involved in the beginning of an addiction is negative reinforcement, where you have people are in a stressful state, and then you remove that unpleasant state by drinking alcohol because it's a relaxant, and that therefore causes them to repeat the behaviour. So three things involved there. Then let's have a look at maintenance. What happens here? You've got the same reward processes continuously going on, so they make you more likely to repeat the behaviour, so that's just continuous and ongoing. Equally, then you have negative reinforcement as well, but by now, once the addiction has begun, you will experience withdrawal symptoms if you try to stop. That's pretty unpleasant with alcohol. I've already mentioned in my last video hallucinations, shaking, sweating. On top of that, you've got psychological symptoms such as anxiety, irritability, and so on. So yeah, pretty bad withdrawal symptoms. Then we've got relapse. So there's two things involved here. Negative reinforcement. Again, if someone's trying to quit, they will find many times that the withdrawal symptoms are too unpleasant and they end up giving in and drinking again. And equally, if they do manage to quit and get past the withdrawal symptoms, negative reinforcement may still happen if they still have a really stressful life that helped to start off the addiction. If that's still there, you've got the same temptation, drink and reduce that stress state. Again, negative reinforcement. And the other thing, this isn't mentioned in your textbook for relapse, but I think it ought to be, and we'll talk about it in a minute anyway. You've got the same thing as with smoking, conditioned cues. So you've got different things that you always experience with alcohol, such as bottles, glasses, smells of alcohol, being in a bar, football, those sorts of things. They become associated with the pleasure of drinking. So again, when you encounter them when trying to quit, you get the start of that pleasure response, you experience craving. Right, let's look at some evaluation. Supporting research. So we've got Koob did a study looking at the amygdala, which is an area of the brain which is involved in lots of different things. One of the things it does is identifies threats in our environment, but actually they found that it was really overactive during withdrawal. What it's basically doing is creating a stress response in people, as well as sort of dealing with the withdrawal stuff. You've also got, it's basically holding people in a sort of constant state of stress. So this basically supports the idea of negative reinforcement, because it's showing you biologically that people are in a really negative state when they're not drinking. And then also you've got a practical application, so this is your second strength. Because we know about this theory, they've been able to create a treatment for alcoholics called CERP, cue exposure with response prevention, which basically in that you expose alcoholics to those conditioned cues that we talked about, and then rather than letting them drink, so this would be something you'd do with someone who is trying to quit, you rather than letting them drink, you prevent them from drinking to cure the sort of state of stress, the cravings that they've been put in. If you do that enough times, it breaks that association between those things and pleasure. So that then means that when they encounter those things in future, they won't have that intense craving, and they're less likely to relapse. So that's really helpful, that this theory has led to a really helpful treatment for alcoholics that makes them more likely to be able to quit. Okay, weaknesses. One big problem, again this is a rat study, is that people have questioned the involvement of dopamine, because Koob again destroyed the nucleus accumbens in rats. Remember, that is this area here, the area number 2 in this picture of the brain. It's a key area within our reward pathway, and basically once it was destroyed, the rats weren't producing dopamine. But what they did do is they still kept pressing the lever in their box to get alcohol. So it suggests that the alcoholism actually was being controlled by something else. But they're not sure what, maybe endorphins, but more research is certainly needed. The last problem is that the learning theory doesn't explain why lots of people are able to drink but don't develop an addiction, because that's true for many, many, many people, that they do experience all these rewards and reinforcement and all that. All of this stuff is true for them as well, or lots of it, but they don't move from drinking to addiction, and the learning theory can't explain why one person would and one person wouldn't. It can't explain those individual differences between people. Okay, that's all.